And then my boss, as is customary, lived with 3 or 4 of the coworkers there as well. And he had his one little room, and I looked at it. There was clothes everywhere and a mattress on the ground with sheets. That was it. Like, and you're supposed to be the CEO, and we're supposed to act like you as if we're the leader of the company, but you live in filth. It just didn't make any sense.
So, Justin, you worked for a branch back in 2011, 2012. So this was before I was even in it. And it's interesting to see how much of this remains the same from what I experience and from what dozens of people have told me since we've started this project. Firstly, though, this happened almost 10 years ago. And obviously, this is something that you've held on to, possibly still been affected by. So, what made you want to come forward after all this time?
Well, as you said, I've been holding on to it for a very long time because it's really affected me somewhat negatively. I guess I'd be a psychiatrist's dream, so to speak, just because of how much stuff I've held on to. And then it'll just come back in every 6 months or so, and it'll just be a really annoying thought, and then finally be gone. But it's just all the stuff I went through. I haven't really told anyone about this, even my wife, until this week. Like, they kind of read what I sent you and whatnot, and like even my little brother was like, "This was bad," and my wife is just like beside herself too. It's like, how did you do this and survive? It's just kind of those. It's been 10 years, but it's still so vividly stuck in there just because of all the garbage I went through.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about what you did and where you worked. You worked for a couple companies. The names you sent: Atlas Marketing, Atlas Charities, and we'll talk about why there is that switch in a little while. But you went through the general interview process, and you're looking for a job, and you come across these things. So, what was your impression of that whole, like, the job ad, the interview process, getting to the hiring?
Well, like, the job ad was looking for marketing ninjas. That seems to be a common theme around them trying to find applicants. This is post the 08, 09 market crash. So at that time, it seemed like jobs were scarce, even though in reality, they probably weren't, because everything was starting to pick back up at that time. I just moved down to Arkansas to live with my dad for a bit there. Got a job like the weekend I moved down there, or got called to interview with them the weekend I moved down. I go there for the first interview, 11 a.m. in the morning, get there, and there's a bunch of people outside. I'm like, oh no, this is a massive interview for this high class kind of ad agency, is the way it looked. Sit there for about 15 minutes. I'm starting to like ask what's going on here. They finally unlocked the door. Someone went to go get a key. And everyone runs into the back, and it's me and 3 other people. Turns out the boss was completely hungover and didn't show up on time. And so then we go through the interview. He asked me the standard, how did you hear about us? Career builder, whatever it was, I said. And then he asked me this strange question, like, I give you a ticket to anywhere in the world, why would you go? Well, he wasn't really paying attention to what I said because he was looking on Facebook or whatever. And I do this thing every now and then where I completely zone out and my mouth keeps talking. So I'm rambling off all this stupid stuff about wanting to go to England or something like that. And I know he's not paying attention. I just keep talking. And I know I'm completely zoned out as well. And somehow he's like, hey, he calls back at 2:00. I go home, calls back at 2:00. Hey, we want you for interview 2. Okay, great. So somehow he just wanted to see if I could, I was a warm body.
Yeah.
In retrospect. So go to interview 2, sitting in there waiting for whatever. The gentleman at the front counter there, because I didn't have a receptionist or anyone else, which is really odd. I was like, so what do you do? He's like, well, what interview are you on? I'm on interview number 2. He's like, oh, you'll find out. But, what? And I asked, so, okay, what do you, and I kind of like, what do you do here? He's like, oh, he wouldn't really answer that either. was like, okay, what do you want to do? I just said that. He's like, you wanted to be an opera singer. All right, great, interesting. 25-year-old wants to be an opera singer. I had no problem with him. And then my interviewer comes up, Matt was his name. He eventually was my trainer. And he calls me Vincent. It's like Vincent and Justin aren't even close. And of course, I give the deer in the headlights, like, no, it's not me. It must be him. I'm like, I'm Justin. Oh, yeah, Justin. Sorry, that's who I meant. Just the psychology there on that one really annoyed me.
Yeah.
And then we go out into the field, and it's like, and he finally says, yeah, we're going to go door to door and sell AT&T. Have you ever heard of AT&T U-verse? No. Think of it like your basic cable and internet package all bundled up together, but using fiber optics. All right, cool. Mm-hmm. We go out in the middle of nowhere and we start going door to door. I'm like, are we going to get doors slammed in our face? He's like, yeah. Okay. That's rather odd. So, and he's like, we're just going to see how well you interact with the people we talk to. So it's me and Matt and another guy, Tuck, and then his interviewee. We go out there, we start knocking on doors, a lot of no's, a lot of doors slammed in our faces already. We finally get to talk to someone. And these people have this beautiful garden. I have no idea what they're talking about or what they're really trying to sell exactly. But I'm like, okay, I'm supposed to talk to these customers.
Yeah.
And they have this beautiful garden. So I start talking at length about how to transplant a good plant. It has nothing to do with anything, but it's just, hey, so I'm trying to make a good impression to my interview. So then we get back home 8:00 at night. Because I showed up at 12:30. We left at 1. We walked door to door till 8:00. Got back. They do a quick post interview. They make you take a quiz afterwards to make sure that the interviewer did his job, so to speak. And we come back, ask a few questions. About an hour later, after I get home, hey, you got the job. Show up tomorrow in your best suit and attire. Great. So that was the interview process. The big issue I had there too, they never really told you the pay structure either during the interview. Yeah. They just gave you a sheet of, as an account executive or a trainee, you'll make $100 to $200 a week. Kind of strange. And then you make $200 to $500 once you aren't a trainee. Yeah. And then once you become your team leader and you start building your team, you make more and more money, and then sky's the limit kind of thing. If you ever seen the movie Boiler Room, similar to that. And then, so I thought, I'm going to be making good money. Never explained it was full commission or anything like that as well.
So a few red flags there. Obviously, not knowing what the job is until you're literally going out to perform the job. I've never come across any other company or industry that does that. Usually they have the job description in very clear, very plain language. These guys, Cydcor, Credico, Smart Circle, they do not do that. They hide behind a lot of buzzwords and empty language. Not not knowing your name, that's not very good. Asking what round interview you are to kind of tailor the answer to what the question was, that's a lot of weird stuff there. But and just based on what you described, to me it didn't sound like anything that I would have wanted to do. Nothing positive to me. But in your case, I'm sure, hey, I just moved here. Not only did I get an interview, but I just got offered a job. I might as well stick with it, right? Because who knows how many other jobs I'm going to be offered.
Exactly. I had been applying for other jobs, and this was the first one who got back, which, watching your stuff here, that's usually a big red flag if they call you an hour after you sent it out.
Yep.
So, and then the other strange part with it too was I called my brothers up afterwards, and my older brother's like, sweet, what is it? Well, and I explained it to him in detail how I was explained in the interview. And he's like, so it's a pyramid scheme. No, it's leadership training. He's like, so it's a pyramid scheme. No, dude, you don't understand. It's like I started defending before I even did the first day on the job. Mm-hmm. And I should have
Yeah.
listened to my brother.
I mean, one person's training program is another person's pyramid scheme. It really just depends on how you look at it. But that's really interesting that on the first day, you had people in your support system already saying what it is, let's be
Yeah.
honest. But even already so, you were pushing back. And who, that might be just because, you got the job, that's exciting. You just got a job. And for someone to say, "Oh, it's a scam" right off the bat, I mean, no one wants to hear that, So I'm sure it's a normal reaction. You talked a lot about some of the things that you went through in the field, going door to door. What sticks out to you now? Like you said when we first got started, there's a lot of stuff that still affects you. Do you still, think back to times when you were walking door to door and horrible weather, hot days, rude people, possibly dangerous situations that you found yourself in?
Well, walking door to door, you meet all kinds of different people. And a lot of the times I had, just not interested, door slam in the face, fine, whatever. And then I had a couple dogs sicked on me. The key there was just stand still and don't make any sudden movements. I had guns shown to me. I got called or told many times, because when you knock on the door at 7:00 at night, in between, November and January, it's dark.
Yeah.
And people are just like, "What are you doing here?" And get a real effing job. It's like, what? Okay. And it's like, I'm trying to do my job, but yeah, whatever. We had the cops called on us how many times because we're in a private zone, or the apartment complex doesn't allow AT&T or different TV carriers, internet carriers, do contracts and whatnot. And it was just, the problem was, after getting no's so many times, it really just starts to affect you mentally. And all the negativity, well, you're not supposed to get negged out.
Right.
And then you just, it just takes toll on you over and over and over and over. And then even when you do get a sell, it's like, great, I got one. And you just keep getting more and more negative over and over and over, day after day. You just start to become numb and really just more and more angry as time goes on, unless you're one of the successful ones in the business.
What was your office culture like? Because you talked a little bit about a few things in your message, but going back to the first day, your owner kind of gave you this weird impression. You're around all these other people who are dressed in suits. He's not. What do you remember from like your atmosphere meetings, and the people that were kind of running this fake company?
So there are two companies under Cydcor at the same time in the same building. For some reason, AT&T put them both in the same building. They're completely unrelated. I mean, everyone chain smoked. The culture of it was a very hypersexual environment as well. We didn't have a whole lot of women in our office, though. It was mainly guys. And then there was a lot of just be careful what you say around the boss, because he's always the one-upper. He's always got the last say. If you make him mad, good luck. And as you said, he didn't wear a suit for the first 3 months out of the 6 months I was there. But he would always act as if you're the boss of this company. How would you want to do it? Well, the problem with that was, how can you act as you're a CEO of a company if everyone's doing all this stupid stuff? And it's like a frat house. It's a giant frat house in a building, which you've heard over and over again, as obviously it's the same thing. He had his favorite story, and maybe you've heard this one. Some executive waiting in the airport, and he brought a bag of chips along, put it in his bag and whatnot, and he's just waiting for his plane. Meanwhile, a lady sits next to him and starts eating his bag of chips. And so he's kind of awestruck by that, but he starts, reaching his hand into the bag of chips and eating them too. Well, they get to the final chip. Well, the guy grabs the chip and starts going, and really enjoys the last chip. Doesn't think anything of it. He's like, I showed her. Sits back in the airplane, opens his bag. There's his bag of chips. And he's like, that goes to show that perception is reality. That's why we always have to wear our suits and whatnot. And looking at it now, it's like, no, that guy was a complete a-hole.
Yeah.
For it, not, we would say, hey, where'd you get that bag of chips? A normal person would.
Yeah.
And it was just all that. And then he would also go on like, how to use your time wisely. You always start your laundry first when doing your chores. Okay, obviously that's a no-brainer. And then he would also like, how do you, press your shirts or get them unwrinkled? Like, I use the dryer as a sane person would. No, you always got to iron them. You can't use the dryers. But technology has given us the ability to, not waste a half hour pressing our shirts, all that. No, you're doing it wrong. And you're just trying to keep going through your head that how his way was always right. Mm-hmm. And it's just, and then as I talked about in my story to you as well, he was like my first day on the job. We come back to the office, 8:20, 8:30. I asked if I could sit down in his chair in his office. There's 2 chairs, the desk. He's like, no, it's gonna be a little bit yet. Why don't you stand up? Guy takes my seat right away, or it takes said seat within 10 seconds. All right, let's get started. Like, I can't sit down in a chair. The mental games he was playing to show how he's in control, and
yep, that's all it is.
Really, really aggravating.
Yep. I mean, perception is reality to each individual. He's right on that, but his example is not representative of that at all. Perception is reality.
Yeah.
You could come up with any thousands of other better examples of that, but I think there is a ring of truth to that, though, because these people in Cydcor, they perceive themselves as being business owners, as having the greatest opportunity in the world, and that's their reality. Because nothing you tell them is going to go against that belief. Even if you have factual information, you might have proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Their reality is still their perception of how much better they are than everybody else. And they're the ones for changing that reality. It's up to them. No one else can do it for them. So you had talked a little bit about the one instance where you had somebody, there was another office there, and somebody quit like very explicitly in front of you. And even they even made up an excuse for that, right? Like that was like, okay. There was nothing, it's almost like there was nothing to see here, right?
Yeah. So another kid who worked in the other office, his name was Matt as well. Big, boisterous, very friendly guy. And he's the other office's top salesman. He's doing 10 applications for AT&T a week, which like $1,000 a week just for him. And he's kind of complaining like, hey, I'm working all this and you're not giving me anything. And the door is closed and you just hear him getting louder and louder and louder. And you just keep screaming. And you just keep hearing repeating, I'm not going to keep busting my butt for $150 a week, because that's the average that the average person makes working for these companies. And they're just going back and forth. And finally he just screams out, curses at the guy, slams the door. He's like, so long, guys. It's like, okay, bye. Nice to meet you. I only met him like twice. And he just screams, and then like, okay, what happened? He's like, oh, he's just angry. He doesn't feel he's getting, the money he deserves. But this is the structure everyone goes through. Everyone's got to do it. It's like, okay, but no one quits like that for no reason.
Yeah. So
they just, and then they try and kind of like, all right, let's forget it. Let's go on. Let's do this. Mm-hmm. Okay, fine.
You talked a little bit about the psychological techniques that you use, that we all use for like interviews and things like that, specifically saying, like I remember as well, never saying the word you, making them want the job, selling the job rather than selling yourself, which is, the same techniques you use when selling AT&T or Spectrum or Smart Circle products or anything. The same techniques you use on customers, you're using on these people. And, you talked about one example too of an older person who, probably same situation, probably was desperate for a job. And, you said that you wouldn't have felt right, putting this person through that. Right.
Yeah, this guy, late 30s, early 40s, maybe mid 40s, had wife, kids, all that. Apparently was up in management of like a food processing plant, got let go due to everything that went down with the correct financial crisis. And he really wanted, his resume, because my boss showed it to me, like entry level, entry level, entry level. He knew he had to start back at the bottom. And it's just, and I just didn't have the heart to do it because everyone else we had taken on who had something of a family or a fiance, it went straight down. Like they were in the midst of a divorce or broke up or something like that. It's like, this dude has a family and kids and his kids are going to need him. I don't feel in good conscience having this guy go through this. And how is he supposed to provide for his family if he's only going to be making $50 a week for the first 2-3 weeks of him training, which start to come 3 weeks from the day we hire him then.
Yeah.
So he's going to be making $150 for 6 weeks total for 60 hours of work. Like, how's that supposed to, I can't in good conscience do it to this guy. He'd be making more off unemployment. I mean, so, and it was just like, I really wish I could have told him, dude, do not, just leave now. Don't even bother through this. But we went through the training. It was like 2 days before Christmas as well, so no one was at home. So we just walked around for 6 hours in 32-degree weather and just talked and walked around. And I'm glad I didn't hire the guy. As much as you hate to say that, it's like, hey, I'm glad you didn't get the job. It's just This guy really needed something better than most.
Yeah, and I mean, based on what you know now, I think we could apply that to pretty much anybody. You didn't hire. I remember when I first put the film out, because I kept all my emails. I just sent out a mass email to everybody who applied for a job and I interviewed them saying, be glad you weren't hired for this. This is really what was going on. So yeah, that's probably a good thing at this point. You had mentioned earlier about the very like frat atmosphere, and you had talked about you constantly going out, right? You guys were always out on the town, always going to bars, always drinking and stuff like that. Was that something that was almost like required for you to do? And how often were you having to do that?
Well, Thursday night, of course, was always team night. That has been the same through every company, it sounds like. And then, but Monday night we'd go out, Tuesday night we'd go out, Wednesday night, the weekends, even when we're not together or not at work, or on Sundays we didn't work, Saturdays we still did. We'd still go out and we just get hammered till midnight, then go home. I'd sleep it off, have to be up, and everyone walks in hungover. But then, for atmosphere, we got to get all psyched up and ready to go, even though everyone's about ready to crash again. And one time I did just leave right after work. Like, I'm done. I got a phone call. Hey, where you at? I went home. Well, why? We got stuff we got to do here yet. No, we don't. I'm going home. I'm tired. It's 8 o'clock at night. I've been on my feet all day. I'm going home. I'm going to sit back, relax, watch some TV, hang out with my family. And they just make it seem like if you don't do it, you'll be ostracized for at least a week or so. And then like, they won't invite you or let you come to it. So then they'll make you want to come to it again. So it's kind of the boys club kind of thing and the frat parties. And then my boss, as is customary, lived with 3 or 4 of the coworkers there as well. And he had his one little room, and I looked at it. There was clothes everywhere and a mattress on the ground with sheets. That was it. And you're supposed to be the CEO, and we're supposed to act like you as if we're the leader of the company, but you live in filth. It just didn't make any sense. And then he would get probably the drunkest out of everyone, and we'd have to watch over him consistently just because he would get to the point where he's throwing up or about to fall over. And it's like, you're supposed to set the example as the role model. The strange part was he looked like he was 35, 40. He was 23.
Oh, wow.
And I was 22 at the time. So it's like, Now, given he's a big imposing figure, he's like 6'5" and 250, but still,
Yeah.
you're not supposed to look that old at 23 years old.
Right. Yeah. I mean, knowing what we know now, I mean, he probably had reason to drink as much as he did because he hated his life, right? He has to give off this impression of everything's fine and I'm rich and I'm successful, but I can't afford my own place. I'm living on a floor and I hate my life. I hate my job. How did I get sucked into this? This is not at all what was promised to me, but I can't tell you any of that. Because if I told you that, you'd quit, and then I'd have to shut down, and then I'd be even in a worse spot, supposedly, right? Based on his perception, because perception is reality.
Yeah,
that's what he would think. So, but yeah, that makes sense. So you made an interesting switch, according to your experience. I have not heard this happening before, honestly, where we just kind of go from one thing to another. You were selling AT&T. And then you started going to charities. The one charity that you brought up was Plan U.S.A, which is a derivative of Plan International. So how did that conversation go? Like, how was it presented or sold to you in a way? And what was your experience like? As horrible as it sounds, selling charities to people.
Well, the whole thing with that was he kind of just said, due to some circumstance, hey, we're dropping AT&T and we're going to switch to Plan U.S.A. It's a charity. We're going to go down to Houston and train for a week. Okay, kind of strange. Well, I come to find out that apparently when he was working his way up through the ranks, the day he was promoted to assistant manager, his manager quit. So then, like, his manager's manager then took him under his wing. Well, they were getting fed up with Cydcor, and then they decided to switch over to Credico, which you would think that everyone would then have to start working over from the bottom, that because you can't just switch an entire. That's not how the system seems to work. So somehow they were able to do that. So then we went down to Houston and trained for a week. We drove down on New Year's Day, with everyone hungover, of course, because it's New Year's Day. And we had to take my car, which was the small 2-door coupe, because I got like 30, 35 miles to the gallon. Interesting thing, too, for everyone having to go out in the field and have a car, 50% of the company didn't have a car. It was really odd because no one could afford it. And if something broke down, they couldn't fix it. So we took 3-4 cars down to Houston. We get down there. And the week before, we were told, hey, we're staying at this really ritzy hotel. We got a great deal on it because one of the people we're going to train with works at this hotel on the weekends. So he had gotten drunk the week before we left and called up the hotel to confirm the reservation. Well, the person working at the desk wasn't the person that he set up everything with. And they're like, you're not supposed to be getting this good sweetheart of a deal. Here's the real price now. He's like, well, I can't afford that. So he cancels the reservation. We get this 1-star hotel with a pool that's out of order. And it's an outdoor, doors are facing outside, everything like that. It's just as cheap as could be.
Yep.
So we go down to Houston. We go down to this massive office. We had talked to this guy over the phone on a conference call, which is customary every day during training. He apparently fired someone while on the conference call for not wearing a tie correctly. So this guy was, either that was a plant or a ploy, or he thought he was the big deal as well. His name was Paul. And we got down there, we trained for a week, we learned the systems. It was just kind of strange going from something physical like internet and TV, where you get value for it, versus the feel-good product. And with the pay structure, it was really odd too, because you get $35 a day working for a plan, which was better than AT&T, which was if you don't sell, you don't get paid. Great. So you get $35 per day, $65 per $30 a month subscription. But if you don't sell, you get like 2-3 weeks of training, I believe. But if you aren't averaging 2 apps a day, you're fired. Well, my boss couldn't obviously do that with a crew of 10. So if you didn't sell your 2 apps, you wouldn't get the $35 a day as well. So he's doing a workaround to keep his team available. Well, and going down to Texas, seeing how they've done it, how they did it, okay, fine. It's nothing real. It's nothing really innovative about how they sell and try and reach people with the emotions. But we go back and it's just not working. At least for me, it wasn't. So I went like 3, 4 weeks without selling, and my bank account's just going, "Hmm." And I'm down to my bank account's hitting zero. It's like, I can't do this. And we would sell it as, okay, here's 3 children you can sponsor, $30 a month. Great. Well, they would get one, but then, yeah, we were running into problems of, hey, I'm trying to reach out to this kid, nothing's coming back. Or there was this $15 general like donation you could do every month. Well, they would make up stories. Hey, it's a well building program down in so and so. Or for the kids too, we would make up terrible stories about what these kids are going through. We have no idea what they're going through. Like they're saying he's in a civil war in this country. It's like, that country is not in a civil war, dude. Quiet. We had interns in with us while we were training as well, that were with the Houston office, and Paul, the owner, was like, guys, make sure you don't badmouth Plan USA and whatnot. I mean, it is easy money. We're selling the good heart stuff, but it's all about the money for us. But we can't say that to these interns, because apparently years or before that, some other office hired this undercover reporter and actually broadcasted what these atmosphere meetings were like, where the boss is saying, it's all about the money, screw the kids, screw the charity, we're just here to make a quick buck. And it's like, well, you're echoing that same sentiment, but we don't have any cameras that we know of here at the moment. So it's like, they didn't care. They just wanted the quick and easy buck.
They don't care.
Yeah. We would have to lie too if like, this is just a one-time donation too. Yeah, absolutely. But little they know, they're set up for automatic payment for $30 a month from there on out. So it's like, okay, we're lying about these kids. We're lying about how we're doing it. We're lying about our pay structure as well. Because like, if they ask how much do you get paid for this, oh, we just get enough for food and gas. It's like, no, we get $65 per kid you sign. And it's like, you just can't do that for so long without losing your soul.
So you didn't even tell these people that it was a monthly debit transaction.
We tried to as best we could, but we would kind of wait for that till the end, right before we made the call to sign things up. But if someone's like, it's just a one-time thing, right? Then we would say, yeah. And then if the phone operator on the other end said, remember, this is a monthly thing, sometimes the phone operator would play along with what we said, like, oh yeah, I'm sorry about that, and just type it in too. So the phone operators, every now and then, even though they weren't supposed to, would double check with things to make sure that they could run the app through as well. So
who are the phone operators?
Well, we'd have to call in to get their social security, to put their social security numbers. They actually worked for Plan.
So they worked for the actual charity.
Yeah.
And they would still sometimes lie to these people.
Yes.
Wow.
That only happened about a handful of times, but it was just because we would go on college campuses. Like, when you want to hit up charities, let's go to broke college students. Yay. Let's help that out. It didn't. And we just grab kids off the street in between classes at the University of Arkansas. So we shouldn't be doing this either.
I mean, there's no ethics here at all. The whole structure of Cydcor and Credico and Smart Circle is that they prey on either desperate people that are looking for a job to get them into this nonsense, or they prey on poor people for whatever they're selling. They prey on poor people, so they go into the poorer neighborhoods where people shop at Walmart to try to give them a better deal, right? Give them free stuff and make it sound more appetizing to them, because it sounds like, oh, maybe I'll save some money, when in fact you never save money with these third-party companies. Your bill's always going to go up. Everything about these companies is deception and is unethical, because you literally are just trying to squeeze every dime out of somebody, whether it's someone like you who was not getting a paycheck, you were just getting paid commission, and you were, still selling and still making money for your owner and whoever else up in Cydcor and Credico, or the customers themselves. It's all about ripping people off and taking advantage of people that are not in a good situation. That's literally what this entire industry is. And unfortunately, you have companies like AT&T, Spectrum, DirecTV, Verizon, and now apparently even the charities kind of know about some of the stuff that's going on, at least according to your example, where their ultimate goal is, again, making money. And at least for the charities, you'd think, well, there's some kind of good that can come from that. But again, with the math you used, for every $30 donation you get $65. There's kind of a big difference there in terms of how much money you're getting versus the charity.
We had asked that question when we were training down in Houston. It's like, how does this work for a $30 donation? Well, if you get them to sponsor a kid, statistically, they will stay on for 2, 3, 4 years. So over time, it will, pay for the $65. And according to part of our sales pitch, as well as part of, we're a 501c3 and whatnot. It's like, no, the charity is, we're a business. We had the lowest overhead out of any charity out there. Behind the Ronald McDonald House. And it was like, we had only an 8% overhead. Because shortly before that, I think it was UNICEF, they found out their CEO was paid $2 million or something dollars like that. And then United Way went through some kind of big thing too. So it's like, we're the good charity. Maybe Plan USA is, well, we physically aren't.
Right. Yeah, and I know literally nothing about Plan USA or Plan International apart from you and I think one other person I've talked to who sold it. But it's an extra layer of disgust and evil when a Credico company tries to talk about itself in the same realm as a charity, an organization that is actually trying to make something good happen in the world versus an organization built on just screwing thousands of people, screwing them through products, screwing them through services, through donations, and screwing them through employment too. And that's what Credico and Cydcor and Smart Circle all do. So, you went through a lot of stuff, and what was the breaking point for you? Because I'm assuming, and I know we haven't talked a lot about your family dynamic, but I'm assuming, if someone was able to see on day one that this is a pyramid scheme, that they're kind of going to predict eventually what's going to happen. You're going to burn out. You're going to toast, as they say. So what was the final straw that finally got you out of this nonsense?
Honestly, it was just desperation because I was broke.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I need something else. I can't do the party life. I had grown out of that probably after the first month of working there. The toxic work culture. I mean, when we were down in Houston, another coworker was like, hey, I want to go out. Met this girl. I want to go on a date with her. He's like, fine, go do that. Be a low-level guy the rest of your life. But you can't say that and mean it without being a complete a-hole. And it just started getting back and forth of there's just all these little knife twists into your back. Like another time, boss went through everyone like, hey, you're good at this, you're good at that, you're good at that. He got to me and he didn't say anything. He just went to the next person. I went and later, like a day later, asked him like, hey, why did you skip me? He's like, oh, you know why. No, I don't. If I'm not a good salesman, tell it to my face at least. I mean, don't just play the head games again that he played for 6 months while I was there. It just got so entire, the emotional headache that it was, the psychological warfare. I just couldn't put up with it anymore. It's like, you know what? I'm done. And I found another job because I went into interviews before I actually had to come into work. So we wanted to be there at 11.
Yep.
And then it's just like, fine, I'm done. And I was like, I'm resigning. Here you go. And luckily, well, and then He's like, hey, I'm leaving out all my friends. That was the reason a lot of these people stayed 2 months longer than they should have. Was, hey, it's my friends. I've grown like a family with them. I didn't. After 2 days, no texting, no calling.
Yeah.
They never called me. I never called them. It's like it's not a family. It's just a stepping stone for everyone else.
Yeah.
So,
No, it's more a cult than anything.
Yeah,
Once
exactly.
you leave, you're dead basically. You're dead to them. Doesn't matter. But yeah, when you sent us the message, you put "my friends" in quotes, and I'm like, well, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because one of the things that they do to you is that they make you feel so attached to everybody. Like you said, oh, we're a family and all this stuff. We got to spend like every night together, going out to the bars and stuff. For my offices, it was just one night a week or one night every 2 weeks we'd go do something, and I hated that in and of itself. One night, I can't imagine 5 or 6 nights. But yeah, that's one of the reasons they do that, is they make you feel like you have this connection, and that is what makes you want to stay. So you might be making no money, you might be getting doors slammed in your face, dogs sick on you, days when you physically can't come to work, and your owner says you better get to the office now. But the only reason that you stay is because of the other people. You feel this bond. You're going through something. You might hang out, you might have fun, but as soon as that part of your life is over, they immediately forget about you.
Yeah, exactly.
So it was worth nothing.
Just 6 months just wasted for no reason other than to act like you're at a frat house again.
Mm-hmm. So what was after you were out? What was the family dynamic like with your support system? Were they all kind of waiting for that moment to happen, or like what was that like?
My family was actually, I didn't explain into graphic detail other than it's like, hey, I'm having a really tough time with it. Like, do what you got to do, man. They were actually like hoping I would succeed. And it's like, hey, I quit my job. I'm not doing this. I'm like, all right, sounds cool. Like, I'm glad you found something different. Hopefully this works out better. And like I said in the beginning of this, like, I've never really told anyone about this. And it's just been kind of stewing from time to time. And I don't know, another story that I dealt with my boss, like on a Saturday, I'm violently ill. We're driving down the street, or I'm driving down the interstate trying to get to the office, and I have to pull over. I'm throwing up. I text him saying like, hey, dude, I'm violently ill. I'm throwing up on the highway. His first response was, who is this? Like, it's Justin. He's like, he calls me. How dare you text me saying you're ill when you have to be at work in a half hour? It's like, I'm violently ill. What? I'm sorry, I can't come in because I'm going to throw up all over everyone. I've got it on my suit and everything. Well, in his words, he was going to let me have the day off. What? You don't let someone have the day off for being sick. You don't act like you have full control over what they can and cannot do. And that goes back to the whole cult leader thing that we talked about. So come on, man.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of relationships there between those types of behaviors and cult leaders, because they want absolute control. And it sounds like this person did. Like every action, every statement, like you've said, the little comments, they were just to assert their control over you. So it's almost like not even an employer-employee environment anymore, or ever probably. It's a cult leader subject environment. You are a subject to this person, and whatever they say, you must do. That whatever their demands, their commands are, you must fulfill, or you won't be in their good graces. And you've shared a couple examples of that. It's just horrifying. And something that I wonder is, these personality traits that these cult leaders have, is this something that they've always had, or is this something that being in Cydcor, Credico Smart Circle, just brings out in them, and it just gives them, it like allows them, or it makes them feel like it's okay to treat people like shit, and to say certain things to them, and to behave in these ways, because the higher ups do it, and they learn that attitude from the regional consultants and the national consultants. So, I wonder, do cult leaders find Cydcor and Credico, or do Cydcor and Credico create cult leaders? I don't know. But
I would have to say, using the analogy, crap falls down one hill or comes down or only comes from the top.
Yeah.
I think, or however it's said correctly. So I think they create it just because, hey, this guy started it. He had success in finding me. I've got to be like him. And it just keeps going and going and going and going and going. Because one of the guys who I was with, who started shortly before I did, really nice guy, had no problem with it. He's now a manager of his company. He stayed in it this entire time. I haven't talked to him since, but I would have to expect that he is exactly like Kai, my boss at the time, just because they do hang out together right now. They're still apparently working together, but it's just they create, because every boss that we ran across too, because we met some other ones the exact same way, they acted all the exact same. So I'd have to say that it all flows downhill. It was Kai Petrick and Matt Audebert were the two, because apparently they were in Columbus before this too, and now they're in Vancouver. And then Paul, I don't know what the heck's going on with him. He's changed his company name so many times. I think he's down in Florida again.